So welcome everyone at the Innovation Café. We just had a talk by Bram on his system for uprooting agro-systems. And we're just going into the Q&A now. So if you have any questions, feel free to join us. And otherwise, I also have some questions for Bram. So Bram, thanks for the talk. Very interesting. Of course, we also had your project on show here. So we already knew a little bit what it was about, but it was nice to hear a little bit more about it. And also to see that it's being developed a bit further. You already talked a little bit about it, but can you share a little bit on the further development of this project? Like, where do you want this to go in the end?
I think in the end, the main part is to get the right type of people around the table, I would say. That is also why Jonas is taking a part now in the second phase. I'm really looking forward for other disciplines, other mindsets, to continue this towards a larger team and to get different inputs, different feedback, different steps. That's also why like networking has been a big part of the last year, getting further into the development, getting further into like different circles where people belong to. For example, getting closer to also the governments, for example, of Amsterdam, also the government of Eindhoven, where I'm in good contact right now. So things are happening, definitely, but I'm definitely still looking for like the experts, the professors, or like the counselor, or like all these type of people that you need for these huge topics.
Yeah, I can imagine it's more than just, it's more than just finding the land and just starting. It's like finding all of these people, bringing everyone together. But I was also wondering, because you're mentioning all of these people that you need to include, but are you also planning on, no, wait, I will first start with the question, how feasible is it that this plan will be executed in a way? Maybe not in the way that you're presenting it like this, maybe in a smaller version or something. I can imagine that it might be very tricky to really get this, to really have that part of Amsterdam and turn it into like an agricultural system that whole Amsterdam can feed on. Can you share a little bit on like the feasibility of a project like this?
So also right now, I'm not saying that this is the answer to all our problems. Like, this is not the utopia. This is just a huge proposal where I think is a new way of looking how we could get closer to answers or getting an answer for this huge topic. So it's more like this is almost more like an inspiration for others to continue to work on. So in that sense, in the feasibility, this is I would say pretty unlikely to be happening and to make this happen in exactly the way I have proposed it right now. But of course we need to dare and we need to try a bit and need to be a bit extreme in the proposals. So I really think, I hope in like a year or two, we could start like on a square meter or like a hectare to actually try the system in a very small version, but also to collect more data. Because right now all of these systems are kind of like too young to really say like, this is the data, this is what's going to happen. So in that sense, it will be a lot of work still to get through the data, also through the economics, because there's another topic that I haven't started yet, but of course there's a huge one. And after that, I think then we can really talk about the feasibility. So like the next big step after this phase 2, I would say, is like, let's test this and let's see how far we can go.
Because my other question was as well, like, it's not just making sure that it's gonna be there, but I can also imagine like this like an extreme concept like this, it requires like a massive change in mindset of people as well. Because like for consumption mode,
Yeah, well, 100%. It's I believe we're getting closer already, of course, like with all the news that's around us, and everyone's getting slightly more aware of all the things that are happening and the things that we should kind of change. I think there's still like a lot of information around which is still based on like more money than the actual truth. So that's still like a huge long topic before we can get there. And I think also to get people around the table, as I said in the beginning, I really think it's also the people that don't believe in this yet. Right? Because we still have a lot of people that say like, no, this is not true, or it should be way more the way we're doing it still right now, and this is right. I think that would be like a strong goal if I could at some point change their mindset, that they both see, that they all see like, okay, this is maybe closer to an answer. Yeah. I think at that moment, if I reach that moment, then I think I'm a step closer of having changed the mindset of others.
Fair enough. I have a question here. Why did you choose Amsterdam, and why not starting with a smaller city?
Well, Amsterdam, first of all, is kind of the area that I came from. So it was like, for the graduation itself, it was a good starting point. I knew in that sense the area. The second answer to that question is Amsterdam is going to be the largest city in the coming 20-25 years. Like if you look at 2050, Amsterdam is going to be like around 2.3 million citizens. So in that sense, it's really interesting to think about these huge quantities and the growth that Amsterdam will go through. Right now, if things are working in the right way as I kind of want them, then I'm going to try to find a scenario for Eindhoven. So Amsterdam will go to its phase 2, and I guess Eindhoven is going to stay its phase 1 in that sense. But I believe if we can continue this process and indeed design it for even bigger or even smaller cities, like different questions will come up, and I think also different answers will be needed to find for these different types of areas where people live in. So yeah, that's for now the answer.
And I can also imagine, like, for each city, like different of those, because you're mentioning the 3 systems that you're using, but for maybe like a different city, other systems might be more convenient or better, or like
exactly. There are so many options actually right now to introduce systems for agriculture, and they, like as I said, they all have their pros and cons. For now, in exactly what you said, like the systems that I chose right now, they have the most pros than the cons. But Eindhoven, for example, has a way smaller network, of course, with canals. So maybe like that's already like a big downside to the system that I propose right now for Amsterdam. So I really think that already will be like a first step of introducing another system to either an extra 2 to 3 or take one out and bring another one.
Ernst mentioned that we need more kennels in Eindhoven.
Yeah, I agree, Ernst. I'm focusing on it. I will do it for you.
I was wondering as well, because I mean, you're mentioning you're now looking for people. Do you already have connections with also the government on the plans for this? Like, have you talked to them about it? Like, have you had any response from them, or are you even collaborating with them already?
Yeah, no, definitely. Honestly, also a bit of COVID, it has gone a bit downhill, I would say. But with Amsterdam, it started really good when I launched my project, when I graduated, I would say. The government of Amsterdam was right towards me and saying like, hey, we are really interested. So I've had like a number of conversations with them. We actually were already looking at that time if like a possible location would be there to test the system. So that was getting quite close to actually happening, but then COVID happened. So right now it's like in a very slow pace. And that's why I also picked up the talk with the government of Eindhoven. So now I'm I'm in close contact with the councillor of, I need to say it right, of course, the Climate, Energy and Public Space, Rick Thijs. And he's helping me quite a lot, I would say, of getting towards next scenarios, bringing other people along this topic as well. So the network in that area is working. It definitely can go further still, but things are happening. I would say like it is moving slightly.
Do you also see like, do you have international connections on these topics? Because I can imagine like there's other people and other cities maybe also looking into these ideas that you might be able to collaborate with, or like share ideas with, or so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time.
Yeah, definitely, that's very true. I haven't heard anything yet of like international networks. Although like still one true passion of mine, and then Ernst is even going to be bigger, is to focus on India. Like for example, Mumbai or Delhi, like these cities are, of course, like if you should give a city a focus, then it would be one of these countries that should have the focus of changing their supply of agriculture. That's kind of like a dream scenario. It will take definitely a while before I'm there to really focus on these cities, but it's definitely in the back of my mind that I'm looking to export.
I can imagine. We have another question in our chat. Are you also experimenting with aeroponic farming, which uses 70% less water than hydroponic? Is it hydroponic? I hope I'm pronouncing this right.
Mm-hmm.
Which uses 70% less than regular farming.
Yeah, I agree. In that sense, like vertical farming can still be divided into different ponics. Like if we should go for one type of ponic, then it would be aeroponic. So I definitely agree with that, especially indeed with the less percentage of water. But also like aeroponics and hydroponics still also comes down kind of the supply of water that you can have around you. For example, there's a really interesting company, I actually forgot the name right now, but in Amsterdam, it is running 90% on water. So even the electricity is created by the waters of canals. The canals of Amsterdam is generated with motion, and electricity is created through the canals to start the vertical farming, which is running on hydroponics. So I think it's debatable by location, I would say.
I hope that answers your question. And also, you can check in the chat. There's also a connection there that you might find interesting. Thank you, Hans, for the question. I was wondering if you can share, because I mean, you have this this floor plan of the project and the part where the agro-system would be. What is there now? Like, what would have to make space for this system?
Well, I kind of need to start that answer by the history. Back in the day, I would say like 1960s, 1950s, it used to be like a landfill, and pretty polluting one as well. A type of chemical was dumped under there, well, on the land, but it's now being covered by vegetation. So Amsterdam has created that space towards like slightly agriculture, slightly just like pure landscape where birds and other animals can feed themselves. But it's a weird mix, I would say, in that area. Like it because of the history, it kind of makes it a weird story that for now it looks very healthy and it looks very natural and it looks like a lot of biodiversity is happening, but it's kind of sitting on like a huge landfill. So I think that in total will take up of like the agriculture and the landfill up, I think almost around 85%, and then there's 15% of still 6 villages, if I'm right, that are located there, very small. And there is some space for development still, where industries are being built, also options for extension of the industries. And of course, then we have all the water. And that's kind of also how I designed the landscape, because it has a very peculiar shape. But most of the lines in the way I've designed the landscape is due to the water that already is there. So I, of course, want to keep the space in its most original form as possible, to, of course, have less possible harm as possible. So that's kind of the answer I would say on that side of the waterland.
Do you think like building like an agricultural system on that landfill, like that would be a problem, right?
It would definitely be a problem, and it's still a topic that I'm going deeper in, and I haven't got any good answers yet of like what exactly happened, what would other answers be, can this be moved, how safe is it right now there. It's still like a very unclear topic for me as well, because I cannot get to the information there yet. So that's definitely something I'm working on still.
I mean, I guess that's just one of the problems, because I mean, I can also imagine like having to basically destroy villages for it, like would also be a tricky situation.
No, I'm not going to destroy any village. I'm not going to destroy any industry. They're all going to be beautifully part of the system.
Okay.
I hope I hope I'm even going to give them a better view than they have right now. But that for sure, like I did some search. How do you call it again? Field research in there. I've talked to a few farmers, and they also said that like their production and their way of working is kind of going downhill. There's less and less to do. So there was really this vibe of like some change is needed right now. And I proposed my ideas, didn't yet got like the full feedback of like, yes, let's do it. So of course there's a bit more needed before they also are on board. but no, they will definitely keep their position, and I'm not going to ruin any house or whatsoever.
Good to hear. Could you also spread the project out across several smaller sites near Amsterdam?
Yeah, that's a good point. That was also one of the feedbacks that the government of Amsterdam gave. Like this, I really focused it on Amsterdam, but it's actually more like a metropole or like a province question, almost a debate of like indeed a larger area. Right now, I just wanted to focus, I think, as a message of like the Waterland as I design it right now. It's, I believe through the calculations that I made, like how far I can go into the calculations, it can provide food precisely for the space of city that's on the map, so Amsterdam Centrum and Amsterdam North. So it's kind of giving an indication of how much space we need to provide for the amount of people. And of course, it fitted right now very well within that. It is Amsterdam. It is a space that that Amsterdam owns in that sense. But to come back to the question, I definitely think that would be the next step. And for example, to go back to Eindhoven, there's a beautiful site between Eindhoven and Helmond, which I believe it should more than, the question shouldn't be like how we can provide food for Eindhoven, but it should be a question about like how many cities and villages we can provide with food in that area. So it should be, the focus should be not focused on the city, but on the region. Yeah.
Yes. That's also what I was wondering, because I mean, of course, it's an amazing idea that you're, that you would be self-sufficient in that way with food. But I was even wondering, because I mean, the Netherlands is relatively small. We have quite a few people living here. Like I can imagine also in a different country where there's a lot more space. Like for example, America, I can imagine something like this would be so much easier than a place like the Netherlands where it's all very like closely built together. So you wouldn't probably not be able to, even if you fill out all of the separate, the leftover space that you have, you probably wouldn't be able to feed like all of the Netherlands with a self-sufficient system.
Well, I think we definitely could, like by far, I think we definitely could. Also, if you see like, since we're the second largest country in its food export worldwide, so we are providing a lot of food worldwide. I just believe that it's a very difficult question in that sense, and a very difficult topic because you're talking like, do we need to keep everything indoors in that sense? Like, do we keep it need to self-sufficient for the cities ourselves, or do we need to export that product in the end, because that wouldn't make sense for the global chain? So I think that that's still a question that cannot be answered yet, and where we need to have tons of conversations and data about before that answer can be answered, before that question can be answered. But I definitely think that the Netherlands, if we would transform the entire countryside to production for the cities, we by far could provide food for everyone.
Okay. You just explained that you want to start a project with a pilot site for the agricultural part. Ernst wondering whether the setting up the distribution infrastructure first could be an alternative approach to get going. Did you consider that?
1 second, did you explain that you want to start a pilot site for the agricultural part?
Well, you talked about this very interesting idea to have the recycling use case specific, like people collecting food waste specifically for pigs. Huh? That I find very interesting. So, and of course, I like the idea to distribute it with boats or ships. So I wonder whether this local approach can maybe be started by setting first up this distribution infrastructure and having maybe several small sites, and then following with the production side.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good point. There are a few spaces on the map that I haven't filled in with any answers, I would say. Like there are still like a few undefined spaces, and they're pretty big. And I always believe that will be part of the logistics. So maybe I should start indeed with like seeing what the purpose is of these areas, and maybe it needs to be bigger, and then indeed look to the landscape. That could be indeed a different way of approach. But I think for Amsterdam, it will still be like, even though it is by boat, it's relatively efficient in space, I would say, because a lot can rest on water, which is now still water. So space-wise, I think it will not take up too much in the sense that the design of the landscape is not going to change too much, I believe. If that answers the question.
Yep.
Can I add something to that?
Of course.
Definitely.
I think it's an excellent question where to start. And that's also why we've included the little bubble of policy in our map, because if we would want to start right now collecting people's kitchen waste and give it to a farmer who gives it to his pigs and then start selling that meat to get it going, we couldn't, because from what I've found out so far, it's food is probably the most regulated industry everywhere, so you're not allowed to just feed anything to pigs. My point being is it's difficult to just say, okay, we can start here, because there's often kind of, a snake that bites its own tail. And you often get the impression that policy is the thing that everything boils down to, where the impulse needs to come from, or initiatives that influence policy.
Mm. Yeah, that is kind of my next question. So who would own the thing? So which entity would run that? Would that be, do you envision one centralized big entity that runs the whole operation? Or do you kind of try to have small farmers and, some transport companies, etc., that collaborate in this bigger scheme?
For now, I'm believing in the smaller companies, and partly I would say the government of the Netherlands, since that's also like a next topic in the debate of the politics for this new election. Since too much is kind of owned by province and government. So I would see definitely that the government of the Netherlands will have a bit more grab in a sense of which areas can be changed and not, I would say. And then to the other part, I would say with the new industries, because for example, also if self-sufficiency would actually be happening, tons of other industries will also appear. For example, very simple, saying we like ketchup, we like mayonnaise, right? So there needs to be somehow a little factory that's going to produce all the mayonnaise and all the ketchup for the city, but pickles, but also the crispy onions, the flour, the paneer meal, all these little things. Tons of new industries needs to happen. So I think that is definitely going to be private owned. And for the farming itself, I believe the farmers that are already there will hopefully stay there and collaborate. And also, I think that will be a beautiful collaboration with the citizens itself, where, for example, a household can have a description, I would say, with a farmer, paying him maybe a yearly fee or a monthly fee or a weekly fee, where they support the farmer. So the farmer gets kind of independent from the government and more its own company again. But where the household is then also as a beneficiary of getting the products from the farmland. So I think there are a few beautiful collaborations can be happening in this scenario.
So maybe people are more careful about the recycling when they know that they are feeding the pig they will eat in a year.
Exactly, for sure. And since this huge statistics of saying that 1/3 of our food is waste, honestly, I couldn't see it happening that in this scenario with this landscape, that 1/3 will still be waste. If that indeed can directly go to the pig and people are aware of precisely where it came from and where it will go, that will give so much awareness. And I think it will give this emotion to it, because I think a lot of our waste, it doesn't have any emotion, right? It's just oh, it's gone. But if you really think oh, it will go there, or it came from there, it will get way more value and you will treat it in a very different way. Definitely.
I guess you also would have less storage when you are more local and can deliver, so to speak, just in time, right when.
Yeah, maybe. I'm still I think Jonas said it 2 weeks ago as well. What we just said about they can separate the trash for a pig, for example. But what if you would separate the trash also for the chicken, but also for the duck, or also for the cow? Then somehow maybe in the household it could be 40 different buckets where you would separate the trash in. And then in that sense it wouldn't be efficient. But I believe the loop itself of that's also kind of the part of the food chat, how and where does the food is distributed from the landscape to the household, but also how it goes back from the household to the landscape. That loop is super small. So I think in that scale, it will be very, very small, definitely.
How is exotic fruits and vegetables? Did you include that in your system, or are you really like focusing now on things that are available, that we can grow in the Netherlands? Because I mean, you also mentioned that there's like different versions, of course, and so there might be more possibilities there.
Yeah, I believe we will definitely get a new supply in the supermarkets. Like a few things will enter our supermarket that we are unfamiliar with, which will be produced, I believe, in the food forest. But this is also this other subcategory of import. I don't believe everything can be grown next to a city, even though how badly we wanted to. Like efficiency-wise in electricity and other gases, like it's not going to be durable at all. And also, like right now, like that there is a good part to the global food supply chain. Is it has created so much industry around the world. So many people are a part of this industry and earning their living from. So it's also kind of brutal to say like, okay, every city should just produce their own food, and that's it, and we will do it just for ourselves. It will kill too many industries around. So I believe a part of import will always be there, and it's also like, I think Ernst, you also know more about it, but like cargo shipping overseas by boat, it is a pretty efficient way of transporting. So for example, if we can grow bananas, mangoes still on the other side of the planet, it will be shipped by a boat. In some sense, it's not too bad. It's just the way we're doing it now is just too much. It's just over the top. It's next level, and that we need to reduce. That's why self-sufficiency is a part of this project. But it will still definitely be a part of import.
Education-wise, Hans is mentioning, would it be nice to install small-scale models in schools to get experience and to have children growing up with the idea to be more aware in the future?
Definitely, it will be beautiful. That's actually a good idea. It might also be a beautiful idea of even for the parents itself, right? Like to make a little mindset for the parents itself of the new topics that we are facing right now, and to already give the children the fantasy of indeed how this landscape could be, or like how they could be part of a farm and how they maybe could own their own pig or own their own chicken. Yeah, that's true. There could be a beautiful way of inspiring others. Yeah, good point.
Then I have, because we're running out of time, I do have one more question on more a personal level. I can imagine you mentioned very clearly in your talk, like, I'm just a big concept thinker. I'm not like the expert per se on this. Where do you see yourself going after? I mean, maybe there won't be an after for quite a while with this project, but do you see yourself like doing other projects, or would you prefer to stay in the same area, or do you have any other things that you really would want to explore?
Well, also a good question. So maybe like a little history about me. Before the design academy, I did fine woodworking. So by trade, I'm actually a fine woodworker. And then I went to the design academy, and I felt like, oh, I'm going to be this great designer and have like the craftsmanship in my fingers. And there's still always slightly this part of me that says like, interesting. It's not something that I just don't want to do anymore. So right now, actually, Bas Stoker, that also used to be part of the Kazerne exhibition, we are developing a really cool light system. So it's kind of like another trait of mine that I am definitely passionate about, which is a very interactive way and a playful way of product design, kind of combining and connecting people together. It's a modular system how you can combine light modules together to create more light or less light, like very playful, very interactive. So that's definitely still another side of me that I'm interested in. It's also a bit more like a short-term project and not too long-term. I think it gives the energy a good balance. But I believe for now, if the energy and the passion stays like this, which I believe so, I will definitely work on this for the coming years, 10, 20 years.
It definitely sounds like you guys still have like so many things to figure out. So I can imagine it still keep you challenged for quite a long time.
Yeah, 100%.
And who knows what other collaborations will come from it as well. I can imagine you meet so many people on the way that who knows what you might end up with.
Exactly, but also thank you for inviting me for this talk, because this is the thing that I definitely need, just to get others on board and to get further. Yeah, Ernst, super good questions. If you have more, or if you have more ideas, like please come up. Also, Hans, thank you for the education point. Like I didn't think about it yet. Just if you have more input, like definitely feel free to email me, have a phone call. Hopefully, Corona will be over soon, or for a coffee. Definitely. So yeah, with these opportunities, I am very hopeful that the network will expand. Definitely.
Well, if there's no more questions, we have a couple of minutes left. If there's no more short questions left.
I think Hans said something.
Yeah, he mentioned concept. So maybe you can look into that. It's more focusing on Japan and how they think of like.
No. They don't focus on Japan. They in general.
Oh, sorry, it's the Japanese side. Sorry.
Yeah, the site is called Future Design, and they just want to make people aware, especially designers, of the consequences of what they are designing today. Okay. And I think your ideas fit very well in with their aims. Okay, thank you. I'll look further into that. That sounds good.
So if people want to contact you, where can they find you?
Definitely through, of course, Instagram. And otherwise, if my email address is shared.
You can put it underneath this.
True. Good point. Yeah, I will share my email address and my phone number. So ever feel free to contact me. I will always be available. Here's my email address, and my phone number will be right up here now. Yes. So save it, and I hope to get in touch with you soon.
Great. Then if there's no one else who wants to make any comments, then I really want to thank you for answering all of our questions and for the talk as well. Like I said, it's very interesting to hear, and we hope to hear more from it in the upcoming time. Then I want to thank everyone for watching as well. The presentation will be online on YouTube after this, and also this Q&A will be shared there. So if you want to rewatch it, that's not a problem at all. We will stay online. And we hope to see everyone again next week, where we will have a talk by Marlu van der Kruijsen from Bolton Lab here in Eindhoven. And they're going to explain a little bit about what they do and the products that they have. So we hope to see you all then again. And for now, I want to wish everyone a good evening and